Hi class, in this recording we are going to be focusing on the urinary system, so let's get into it. As we look at our urinary system's primary function is to get rid of waste products from our body. And then as it's getting rid of waste products from our body, some really important secondary roles include monitoring and regulating blood volume, blood pressure, and the overall electrolyte composition of our bloodstream, or just composition of our blood, including oxygen concentrations. As our urinary system is very closely associated with the reproductive systems, a lot of times we refer to them as the urogenital systems. Particularly in males, there's a lot of shared anatomical structures between the urinary system and the reproductive system, but there are also a few shared structures in female anatomy as well. So here we see a female urinary system. As we're looking at these, note how we have our kidneys, which are, well, shaped kind of like kidney beans, and those kidneys drained fluid down into the urinary bladder. And I'm saying urinary bladder because there's more than one bladder in our bodies. And then from the urinary bladder, there's a small tube called the urethra that will drain that urine out of the body. And as we look at our kidneys are going to be posterior to the intestinal organs. So they're more towards the back of our bodies. And usually to access the kidneys, we're going to take a posterior approach because those kidneys are so far behind the digestive organs. Something else to keep in mind is that as we look at our kidneys, both kidneys are not at the same elevation. One kidney is more elevated than the other kidney typically. Then as we're looking at these, our right kidney, right over here, this is the right side, is just a little bit lower than the left kidney. And this is partially because there's a large liver in this part of the body that we need to make room for. Now, as we look at the functions of our kidneys, they are going to filter our blood. As they filter the blood, we will excrete, and when we say excrete, we mean get rid of a liquid waste product. We're going to excrete metabolic waste products. And when we say metabolic, I just mean anything we've made with a chemical reaction in our body. We are also going to regulate the overall volume of our blood by regulating water content. As we change water volume or water content of our blood, the volume will directly correspond to the pressure. And then as we change water content, we change the concentration of dissolved salts, which is going to change the osmolarity of our blood. We will regulate electrolytes directly. We can add or subtract specific electrolytes to our blood with our kidneys to help regulate our acid-base balance. We are also going to use our kidneys to regulate blood oxygen concentrations. When we are hypoxic, when we have low blood oxygen, our kidneys release erythropoietin, EPO. EPO will then travel to the red bone marrow through the bloodstream and stimulate the red bone marrow to make red blood cells, or erythrocytes, and to go through the process of erythropoiesis. So erythropoietin stimulates erythropoiesis. Our kidneys help us to regulate the low amount of calcium in our body, our calcium ion, blood ion concentrations, because they help us with synthesizing calcitrol, a potent form of vitamin D. We also are going to clear excess hormones from the bloodstream with our kidneys. We will also use our kidneys to help detoxify free radicals, although candidly, I usually think of the liver when I think of detoxifying a molecule as opposed to removing a molecule, but our kidneys are also capable of detoxifying just like the livers are. And when we're in a crunch situation, metabolically speaking, when we're very stressed out, we can use our kidneys to take amino acids that have been released into the bloodstream and convert them into glucose. We can go through gluconeogenesis, making new sugar molecules out of amino acid molecules. This is in effect when we start to eat our own bodies and we start to digest ourselves from the inside out to make sugar that we need to keep our brain functioning. Now, as we look at the nitrogenous wastes which are present in our bloodstream, we have quite a few of them. And most of those, when we think of waste products that have been removed from the blood by the kidneys, we're typically going to think of those nitrogenous wastes. But a waste product, generally speaking, is just anything that we have too much of or that has no use for us. So if we have too much sugar in our bloodstream, glucose can be a waste product. If we have something in our bloodstream that we just absolutely don't have a use for, like a borate ion, we could just remove those things from our bloodstream. As we think of metabolic waste, this is going to be anything, any waste product, so anything that we have too much of or that's useless that we made in our own bodies. The nitrogenous waste are going to be a lot of our metabolic waste. So urea is a common one, and we can get urea from our proteins. So as we take a protein and digest it, we break it down into amino acid monomers, and then those amino acid monomers will have the amino functional group removed, and that amino functional group is going to be converted into an ammonia, which is shown right here. And then within our liver, the ammonia is going to be converted to a urea molecule. We also have lots of uric acid. Uric acid is going to be a byproduct of nucleic acid metabolism. So this is the nitrogenous part of the nitrogenous background. So when we think of adenosine monophosphate or guanine monophosphate, these molecules, these nucleic acids, have a little bit of nitrogen within them. And that uric acid is the byproduct of breaking down the nucleic acids. This is the leftover nitrogenous portion. We also are going to have creatine. And creatine, shown here, is a byproduct of the creatine phosphate reactions. So when we look at creatine phosphate catabolism, just review from last semester, a catabolic chemical reaction is when we break a molecule down into a smaller subunit. We use creatine phosphate to store cellular energy within skeletal muscle tissue so we can have a very short burst of energy if needed. And as we use up the creatine phosphate, creatine is a byproduct, we find that we have elevated amounts of creatine in our blood if we have some kind of stressful event to our skeletal muscle fibers. So either you've gone through a lot of rigorous exercise and you tore some fibers, or maybe you had a crush injury. As we look at this urea that's in our bloodstream that has been made from the ammonia, that urea can build up and be monitored. And urea is a really important molecule, so important that we even have an acronym for it, the BUN, the blood urea concentration. And this is going to be used to overall summarize the amount of nitrogenous waste in the blood, because urea is overwhelmingly the most common nitrogenous waste within the bloodstream. Then just to give you a baseline or a frame of reference, 10 to 20 milligrams per deciliter is a normal BUN level. If somebody has too much nitrogen in their bloodstream, they have azotemia. And azotemia is a giant red flag that they may have some kind of renal insufficiency. You're going to see this word a lot, renal. Renal is a technical word that refers to kidneys. If somebody has uremia, that can manifest itself with a lot of diarrhea, vomiting, dyspnea, and cardiac arrhythmias, all because of the toxicities, the toxic nature of that nitrogenous waste as it builds up. And in order to treat uremia, we typically are going to have to give a patient hemodialysis or a kidney transplant. So as we look at our kidneys, a big function of the kidneys is to make urine or to remove liquid waste products from the body. So then this process is referred to as excretion. So when we're going through, when we excrete, we separate waste from the body fluids. So we filter the blood and eliminate those waste products from the blood. And we have lots of excretion. Most people just think of the urinary system for filtering our fluids. But we also, with our respiratory system, can filter the blood and remove carbon dioxide from it. With our lungs, we breathe out that. We also exhale quite a bit of water as well. For any of you who are maybe band geeks and spent a lot of time playing a brass instrument in band, it's lovingly called the spit valve on those brass instruments, and it collects all the condensation that you've exhaled, or all the water that you've exhaled that condenses within your brass instrument. And if your brass instrument gets a little warbly, you need to open up the spit valve and drain all of the water out of it. Even though it's technically not spit, it's just condensed water. The fact that it came out of your mouth means that most people just call it spit, even though it's technically water. We also use our integumentary system for excretion. When we sweat, We remove lots of things from our bloodstream. And when we talked about, as we talked about in the immune system, these inorganic salts in particular, and these acids, we use to make the acid mantle on our skin to help reduce the amount of microbial invasion we incur. We also use our digestive system to remove waste products. In particular, bile is something that we overwhelmingly are going to get rid of with our digestive system from our bloodstream. But we can also use the digestive system to get rid of a wide variety of other things: water, inorganic salts, carbon dioxide, cholesterol. And these products are going to be defecated out. In particular, at the very end of the large intestine, we actually add a little bit of water to the feces as the feces are forming to soften them up to make it a little bit easier for those feces to go through the anal canal. If the feces don't have enough water, then people have hard feces and they're constipated, and it's not a good thing. As we look at excretion, though, overwhelmingly, we excrete or filter our blood with the urinary system. This is how we remove most of the metabolic waste from our bloodstreams: drugs, hormones, hydrogen ions to regulate pH balance, and if we drink too much, we can get rid of that excess water as well. So this was a great crash course introduction to the urinary system. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them in the class discussion board. And as always, happy studies.